Okay, so simple quadratic equations. This here on the board is an example of a simple quadratic equation, which is just x squared equals 9, right? So how this here means that it is squared. So how do we write that? The next line. We can say that x is then plus or minus the square root of 9, okay? If we want to, this is squared, we have to find the square root. And it's plus or minus because negative times negative is also positive. So we have to make sure that you write plus or minus, okay? So we can just say it as x equals plus or minus 3, okay? Because square root of 9 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Easy? Okay. Question 1. Let's try and solve x squared equals 9. Okay, did we just do it? We can write it as x equals plus or minus 9. Yes? And again, so we have to write it as plus or minus is the square root of 3 times 3, right? Because 3 times 3 is 9. So then we can just say that x is plus or minus 3. Okay? Question 2. Let's try another question. Solve x squared equals 25. So we say x squared equals 25. So x is the square, plus or minus the square root of 25. So we can also write it as plus or minus the square root of 5 times 5. Because the square root of 5 times 5 is just 5. So x is plus or minus 5. Right? Okay. Question 3. In question 3, it says solve x squared equals 20, leaving in third form. Alright, so third form meaning that it's just in the square root, right? So this is how we do it. X equals plus or minus the square root of 20. Now, what were we doing before? We were factorizing, right? 3 times 3 is 9, 5 times 5 is 25, so we do it with 20. So, with 20, we can say that 2 times 10 is 20. And now we want to factorize 10 because we can, right? So we can have it as 2 and 5, right? So 2 times 2 times 5 is 20. So we can say it as x equals to plus or minus the square root of that, right? So 2 times 2, the square root of 2 times 2 is just 2. So we can write it as x equals plus or minus 2 root 5. And that's leaving it in third form, okay? That's the simplest that we can go. So let's try and do question 4. In question 4, it says, solve x squared equals 7, correct to 1 decimal place. If that's the case, then we can actually use our calculators for that. So if you're ready, just bring them out so you can take them out right now. And we can calculate it like this. X equals to plus or minus square root of 7. So do you have your calculators? I'll show you how we put it in. So we have a calculator here, right? We write the square root. Okay, we have to find the square root, which is just that, okay? And we say 7. And we press the equals button. Now it'll still give us square root 7. We have to use the converting button, right? So over here, this one here, S to D, third to decimal, we click on that, and then that'll give us decimal form. So to 1 decimal place, it's just plus or minus 2.6, okay? Is that easy? Alright, let's just do question 5. Let's do question 5. Solve x squared equals to minus 7. Alright, again, we write it as x equals to plus or minus square root of minus 7. And we have to use our calculators again for this, right? So, how do we do it? How do we put it in? We can say that square root of negative 7 equals. Now, it's going to come up as a math error, right, on your calculator because x squared is always going to equal a positive number, so you can't actually have a negative number in the square root, right? There is no value for that, so we just write it as no solutions, okay?